Welcome to yet another Blender tutorial online. I'm using the version 3.4.1, which is not the newest, but is one of the latest, fully compatible with the beta version of LuxCoreRender, which we've used here. So let's start by deleting the poor default cube, add a plane and resize it so everything fits on it. So now I add a brilliant diamond. Brilliant is actually the name of the diamond cut. Then I move it a bit and add some other gemstones. These are available through add-ons that are already included in Blender. Now I add a emerald cut, which I modeled myself following some tutorial online, and now the princess cut. So we arrange the scene however you like, just the starting positions for them, and then now we are ready to create some simulation, some physical simulation, so they fall in a natural way. Let's add the plane as a passive object, which we will not move, and now we're ready to select the gemstones and add them as active objects. Once we add them all, now we can hit play and they just fall pretty much lined up. That's because the initial conditions for the simulation had no variations. So let's rotate them a bit, move them a bit on the X and Y axis, because in the Z axis I had already moved. And now if we play, they should fall in a more beautiful way. That's a beautiful fall. So we can look that from another angle, because we want to find a good position for the camera. Yeah, around here we want to see as many objects as possible. So if you just grab the camera and move it like this, it's always pointing to the same direction. So let's add an empty plane axis and go here to the Object Constraints tab and use the constraints to track the camera to the empty. So now if you grab it and move, then we see that it's always pointing to that direction. So let's find a nice position so we can see everything. That looks about fine here. Around here, so shaded will look more or less like this, but now we want to change our render to LuxCoreRender, which is the most photorealistic one. So let's add some materials for the stuff. I took first the plane. Let's delete this old cycles material here and go to the materials tab and add a glossy material for the plane. So let's select the brilliant the first gemstone, and this is the rendered preview. This is the first gemstone. Let's delete whatever is there and add a glass materials base for the gemstone material, which will refract and all this shit. So if you're not getting the update immediately, you just switch to some text view or another preview and switch back to the render preview. So let's change the color. If you just change the transmission color directly like this, it works, but it's like if only the surface had that color. So if you want the whole volume of that stone to have that color as an absorption color, you can add a clear volume like this and set some color to it. This will look more natural and will also be like the real physics work. So let's find some reddish color. Then we find other colors for others, change a bit the index of refraction here, and Yeah, let's do it for the second gemstone. This is the brilliant diamond, so I set the IOR to 2.41, which is the index of refraction for the diamond. Diamonds are usually transparent, but there are actually diamonds that have been encountered that have some color because of presence of impurities like boron. So I'm selecting here a bluish, purplish, grayish color, which is similar to that one I saw. Actually, one diamond that was found in Guntur in India in the 17th century. Of course, it was stolen from there and was called the Hope Diamond. So the third gemstone is there, and let's also yes, I forgot the dispersion here, which is the provides the nice effect of a rainbow or of a prism, if you like to think that way. So this is the third one. We're also putting some dispersion, and that now is the emerald. Let's put some greenish color and some index of refraction between 1.57 and 1.60, which is the index of refraction of it. And the last, I'm just putting anything, because it could be any stone, could be any. So this is about how it will look like after rendered. But let's go to the camera, select it, and add some motion blur to get more realistic movement depiction. So first I will test with a shutter over 1, just to see the exaggerated effect. So it's there, looks beautiful. So let's put a more realistic value between 0 and 1. So 0.5 is about the half, is actually the half, precisely the half of the movement between two frames. Now 0.3, where's the effect? It's gone. Oh no. So let's deactivate it and check. So it's looking pretty much the same as if it were deactivated. So what's happening? So if we grab this here and change the cursor position in the animation bar, we see that they're not moving anymore. So let's go to the scene properties and rigid body world and cache, and oh yeah, we forgot to bake the frames, so they are saved there. So let's put a start and end position for them, and also for our scene, and bake them pretty quick. So now they are baked there. I can just grab this look here down, like the whole animation is baked, and if I grab here, I can select any frame and it will be pretty much saved there. So if I go to the camera, oh yes, with no motion blur activated. Now I activate the motion blur back, and I should see there, it is there, nice. So the motion blur is there. So let's activate the depth of field, which is the cool effect you get from blurring distant things that are in the background and the foreground. And now you choose a focus object. I will just, for easiness, for simplicity, I just pick the empty that we had created, because it's right in the center of the image. It doesn't have to be it. You can pick anything. It's just a reference for focus, but let's do this. But although we have the f-stop set to 2.8, which represents a high aperture of the lens, we are almost not getting any effect. That's because, look here, if I grab, I'm seeing the dimensions of these stones are 2 meters by 2 meters by something, so they're pretty much big. So let's reduce the scale. Now I reduced to 1/10, and now they're 20 centimeters. They're still big, but it should be better. So if we render the thing again, The effect, I can't see any difference. So let's put a more realistic 0.1, no sorry, 0.01 and render it again. No effect visible. So I copied this unit scale as a driver, and I'm going here in the camera. I have the f-stop there, and I'm creating a new custom property. I will name it f-stop 35mm. So this is the f-stop as if we rescale things without rescaling the sensor, the camera sensor, because previously we were rescaling it alongside, resizing it alongside. Now we create a property which will be f-stop for fixed sensor size, and now we paste that driver previously copied from there in the f-stop from the depth of field section, and I copy the name of the property name there we just created, and I will edit this driver. So I add another input variable. I select that camera, the only camera in the scene, and between brackets, square brackets and quotation marks, I paste that name, and I can give another shorter name without any space. And then we select here to scripted expression, and we multiply the scale length, which is the unit scale, by this f-stop 35. Now we can change our f-stop by this property instead, and it should affect it should be affected by the unit scale, because now we're doing it. Yeah, look at that. That's amazing. So now we got what we need. So now the next thing is, let's redo this illumination. I deleted that lamp and I created a sun. So let's move this sun. Actually, the position of it is not important, but this direction we can grab this point is important, because it's just it's like the sun is at infinity, so the position is unimportant. But grabbing that yellow thing, you can actually reposition it, but the sky was not getting affected by it, so I connect this sky in the world tab. I connect the sun to the sky, and now it affects the sky as well. So instead of adding new lights, I'm adding cubes or any object you would like, but cubes have fewer faces and that should be a bit quicker to render. So I will add some cubes that will set as emission objects. I'm using Shift J to duplicate them and grabbing them around so that they fit to our scene. They will be our extra lights on the scene. I will add 2, they are enough. And let's go to shading, add a new material, but we add from here, matte material, and you see that emission there, add new emission thing. I will check the gain. Well, 1000 looks great, so I select 1000. I didn't change the color, let's leave white for the first one, and the second one I put in some pinkish thing. Doesn't look bad, I mean, in the background, and gain as 200. So that's pretty much what you could expect. Let's do a render and see how it looks like. First thing, let's check here in the render engine. We're not seeing any caustics. Caustics are the refracted and reflected light that gets scattered on the diffuse material, or the diffuse part of it. So if we activate, we change lighting to bidirectional, or activate light tracing, so we can use the GPU, we're actually seeing them. Now the caustics are there, looks wonderful. But now let's move that light a bit away, at least from a bit more back from the camera, because I don't want to see the reflection, because I want to highlight the glare from the stones. They are the important things in my scene, so let's move them a bit. The light reflection on the plane is not exactly the most important thing in my scene, but at the same time I want to keep them a bit in the horizon, not exactly above, so I see more shadow and also more caustics. So these light settings look good. I will keep like this. And now we are actually already on the render properties tab, so let's activate the denoiser and some halt conditions. I will put a halt condition of 10 seconds because this is pretty enough for preview. So let's render the scene and count with me from 0 to 10. 0, 1, 2, 7, 10. Wow, that's an efficient clock. So I had activated the denoiser, but I'm getting noise in the scene. What's happening? So let's close this. Our scene is already rendered, so let's check the compositing and add a viewer node so we see live what's happening. Well, there is this output here, denoised. I can connect it to the viewer and compare with the image raw output. So this denoised provides the output of the denoiser, so it's working actually. Now I can check any other frame in the scene, and because I connected it to the composite output, I should get the scene denoised whenever I render it. But I miss now some other stuff from the compositing. So first let's reorganize this. I will add a layout rewrote here, so I keep both viewer and composite synchronized. Let's move this to the left and add a glare node. Where is the glare? It's here. Good. So the first one, it's the streaks, which provides the streaks. So I use Shift D to duplicate and select fog glow to the second one. And now I have both, and I'm just adjusting the sizes, threshold, that defines how intense the light should be so I get the glare. And mix actually mixing the raw image with the glared image, let's say like this. And then I can also select this high quality, so it uses a higher resolution, which means smaller pixels, and then also the effect gets smaller because of that. So now if we render again any frame, we should see some glare. Let's see. It's denoising, now compositing, and it's there. Beautiful. But I still feel like the highlights are not very highlighted, and that's because the plane is too bright. So let's select the plane and go to shading and darken a bit its diffuse color. So I can select a darker gray, and for the specular color I could actually lighten it a bit so we get a bit more reflection of the refracted light on through the gemstones. And if you render again, wow, this starts looking better. Yeah, this definitely looks better. Now the glares are highlighted and also the gemstones themselves. So now another thing we can do is try to reduce a bit the, if we go to shading and reduce a bit the roughness of the plane, then we could see a bit more clear that reflection I was talking about. But what happened? Now the caustics are gone. And why this? If you look here in the render and you select the light tracing, there is a glossiness threshold which is higher than that value. If I put this lower than the roughness of the plane, then the caustics start to be rendered again. But now we can raise it a bit again, because if you lower it too much, the caustics start not being that visible anymore. So we can find a trade-off between the diffuse and the specular, and then yeah, now we raise that to a value that is okay, so we can raise this threshold again. It doesn't need to be that low anymore, and then we can select any frame and render it. Now we got one single glow in the emerald, but since we are doing an animation, we have many frames, and if you have 1 or 2 glares per frame, it's already enough. You don't need tons of them in a single frame, otherwise in the animation will look exaggerated. So we can check this behavior in some other frames. Let's check this, for example. And I will expect a few glows only. Yeah, that's very equilibrated. And also it's beautiful to see how the light transpasses through all the gemstones. An optional step now. Let's recalculate the mass of all these objects and use for this calculate mass. Material garbage. Yes, pretty much what they are made of. Well, let's search here for gemstones. There are no gemstones, so let's use glass, which is pretty close for density. And so now we have proper values for the weights, like in some grams, which is actually like this one, which is actually pretty okay for these sizes. And redo this physical simulation. So let's bike again, and they thought this should be more realistic, physically realistic. So this is an even nicer fall. So now you have a new simulation. Yeah. Now let's check again. So this is the scene rendered with a pretty low f-stop. So if we increase it, then we can get a bit less blur effect from the depth of field, because maybe that's too high. If we put 5.6 with it, widely known, widely used one in the cameras, then we have like this, which is looking better. If you want to play with this value, you can do whatever you want. And we can also try something like 11, and then we'll look like this. So that should be fine around this. So now we can check a bunch of other frames, because now we have the emerald is closer to the camera. But let's increase a bit the dispersion of this diamond and the other transparent stone, because it's a bit boring. Now I think it's a bit better. However, cannot tell much difference, but it's there. So let's render this frame and check some other stuff. We also have some color management in the render. So if we in this render properties tab, we go down here, we find this color management section, and there's a bunch of options. If we go to rendering, we can see the scene, the last rendered frame, and compare how they work here. So the view transformation, there are some options here. With the false color, it's not exactly what I want. Raw, it would be like the full dynamic range. Film log, it's compensated in logarithmic way, so you can edit externally. So let's use the filmic, which is the basic one. You don't need to edit later. So there is also a look, which provides some sets of contrasts, from very low contrast to very high contrast. So here you can see all of them. let's select medium high contrast. I like this value, and the exposure, we can reduce it a bit more so we get even more highlight in the brights, in the glares. So you can see some values here, how they look like. I will select something like minus 0.75. That should be good for the animation. And now it's done. Don't forget to give an output file name and select the codec or file format, quality, settings, and render animation. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like the video you can send me some diamonds, some emerald, some gold bar. I accept all of this. Thank you.